Hey, this is Kevin. In this video, I'm going to go through the process basically from start to finish of setting up a web radio smallest space device, whatever you want to call it, this thing. I'm going to go, like I said, from the start, and this will be probably a little long and boring, but yeah, if you happen to be in a position to have one of these things and you're trying to figure out how to use it, and you don't feel like reading the documentation at smallest.space, then this is maybe going to be helpful. So just to kind of simulate the entire flow, the device is currently off, but I will turn it on. And when it's turned on, this light indicates that the device is basically in setup mode. Again, the documentation on the smallest.space website, if you click on devices in the footer, and then you click around, you'll be able to find it pretty easily to the web radio documentation. It describes what all these different blinking modes mean. But yeah, for now, just trust me that this is the mode that indicates that the device is ready for setup. Now, if you happen to have a device that's already set up, but maybe your network changed, or you want to change the URL that you're actually streaming from, the web radio basically, you want to choose something else, then you'll need to reset up your device, which means you'll need to reset it. And to do that, even though again you don't need to right now, what you would do is you'd press and hold this button down here for 5 seconds ish, and then I don't know if you saw, but it basically stopped blinking for a second, and now it's blinking again like this. So yeah, that's how you would reset it. And now we're again in factory sort of reset mode. I'm going to go through this demo for actually setting it up on my Android phone, just because I'm using my iPhone to record this video. But the actual app itself is essentially the same between Android and iOS, so the experience here should pretty much be the same. Now, when you open the app, you can see there's this scan device QR code. Now, there's a QR code, and I'm happy to send it to you. And if you scan it, it will skip basically the next step, which is going to require us to put in a sort of a password, if you will. However, you really don't need that QR code because it's always scanning for this device, and when it finds it, you can see it popped up down here, and if you click that, it's going to ask you for a PIN, but the PIN is always going to be ABCD 1 2 3 4. Now, not important for this video here, but the reason for this is that at this point there's 3 of these devices in the world, and while I actually care about these being somewhat production worthy, for now there isn't a huge concern with people, secretly resetting your device and then, secretly re-provisioning it or whatever and using a different Wi-Fi network or something like that. So anyway, for now, it's all ABCD 1 2 3 4, but that's something that I can and maybe will change in the future. But it's just easy for now to keep it there. So if you click connect, if you pay attention to that light, you can see it's now blinking a little differently. That's great. It tells us that the device is actually communicating with Bluetooth. If we click configure, we can choose a URL to actually, here I'll go back so you can see that, a URL that you can actually, that you're streaming from. And yeah, so for now, I'm going to stick with the default. This is the WYCE 88.1 here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. However, again, if you had a different URL that you wanted to listen to a different stream, now is when you'd put that in. Now, a second ago, you saw it said retry. That occasionally will happen, and it's if there's a long enough or a short enough lag, either way, between the Bluetooth communication. So if you see that, you can click the retry button and it will just connect. You can see I just hit back and it had no problems connecting back to the device. I'll see if I can maybe trigger the retry. Okay, so retry. If you click retry, it's basically going to reattempt to connect and it should be able to go forward. Now, if for whatever reason that fails, you can always try to turn off the device again, turn it on again, relaunch the app, reset the device, all those kinds of normal things. I will say typically this has worked pretty much flawlessly throughout. Even that retry, I don't seem to get that on iOS, so I don't know if there's maybe some Android specific thing going on, but either way, you should be able to get past that without too much issue. Now I'm going to connect to my network. I'm going to quickly move the phone just so I can type in my web key. And then I will click continue, and you should see something like this. Now what it's doing is it's communicating over Bluetooth the credentials for the Wi-Fi network, as well as that URL for the stream. And once that's done, the radio should, in theory, be set up to actually work. So there you go. I don't know if you can hear that, probably not super well. To be honest, it doesn't sound great anyway, coming from this little internal speaker. And that's fine. That was definitely sort of understood going into this design process. The volume up and volume down buttons are here. The mute button is here. Now I'll tell you, the mute button is a bit of a tricky thing right now. This is something I have to resolve, but I'll just show you. If you click the button really quickly, you'll probably be able to mute it. If you don't click it very quickly, like for example right there, apparently not quick enough, it actually is unmuting and then muting again. But you can see eventually you can get it to unmute. This is something that is pretty poor, quite honestly, and I'm showing it because I want to disclose that thing, but it's painful to show just because yeah, it's something I can solve with software, but it's also something that ideally I might solve with hardware. So anyway, that might be something that I update and fix during a firmware update, but just be aware that that is how the mute button works. It does work, it just is a little finicky. I think it's a debouncing issue if anybody is interested in that kind of thing. Now, I'll show you really quickly a few other combinations and what all of these different buttons do. Actually, I'll show you first that if you shut the thing off, obviously it turns off. If I turn it back, you'll see this light turns on. This is the power button, which will always stay on. It just indicates that there's power. That light turns on when it first tries to connect to the network, but once it succeeds, it shuts off. Now there's a delay before the audio starts playing, and that's because every time you restart the device, it reaches out to the internet to check to see if there's a firmware update. It tries a couple times, and there's a slight delay between each attempt. So that's why it takes, I don't know, call it 5 seconds or something like that before the music actually starts playing. Now again, volume up, volume down. Now there's a couple combinations of buttons that you can press. I have headphones plugged in here. I don't know how well you'll be able to hear this, probably not super well. But if you hit the volume down and volume up button at the same time, then that will toggle between audio modes. So I'll do it really quickly here. And maybe you can hear. So this is headphone mode, and I know that because I can turn the volume up and down on the headphones, and you can maybe hear that it's actually going up and down. If I hit it one more time, that's line out mode. And this is just I can press up and down, but it won't do anything. It's just a consistent set volume for you to hook this up to an amp. Now, to be honest, that was my original point of building this thing, was so that I could switch back to the inbuilt speaker. But anyway, what I was saying is that the original intent of this thing was to be able to hook up to an amp so that anytime I wanted to listen to the radio, without having a radio, I could just stream from the stream. So that's why line out is there. Anyway, I guess that's pretty much it for modes. Now I'll quickly mention, because this is already a very long video, if I press all 3 of these buttons at the same time, if we can focus, you can see that this light just blinked 3 times. Not very exciting, but the reason I did that is because we are currently on version 0.0.3 of the firmware. So this is just a debugging tool. If for some reason you ever talk to me and you're trying to figure out why something isn't working, that would be a way that you could figure out what the version of firmware is that your device was running. So, so that's that combination. If you press and hold, I won't do this now, but if you press and hold these 3 buttons for 10 seconds, over 10 seconds, that will actually reset the firmware to the factory version. So again, kind of getting into the weeds here, but just to be complete, that factory version is there so that if for some reason one of the automatic updates that applies breaks the device, you can always fall back to the original version, which is what you're seeing here. And then finally, although this is not fully implemented everywhere, go back to the internal speaker again. This button here, I mentioned up front that you can press and hold this for roughly 5 seconds and it'll reset the device. You can also press it quickly and it will switch between audio modes. So you can see. Like so. And it's a little more convenient than pressing these 2 buttons. I might make another revision of this board at some point and add additional buttons or some other toggles and things. But yeah, for now, the reason that I don't talk about this first is because you might accidentally completely reset your device and requiring to set it up on Wi-Fi and all that stuff again. But that said, I imagine most people, if you were to actually use this, are just going to use it in either headphone or line out mode, or maybe for like a fun little thing on your desk that just plays like this up through this tinny little tiny speaker, in which case you're not going to be switching modes all that often, I would imagine. Hopefully you just kind of have this funny little ceramic unitasking web radio sitting and just kind of looking sort of interesting. But anyway, I think that's it for now. I guess to close out, I'll go ahead and show you what happens again if we're actually set up. If I press and hold this button, we should see we're back to now provisioning mode, just where we started. And you could now, again, set up your Wi-Fi to a different network or choose a different URL to stream from. So, okay, that's it. Thank you very much, and hope you have a good day.